Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to hit the highlights here regarding the other absolutist areas of Europe as we go through the 17th, 18th century, leading up towards the French Revolution. We're going to focus on Austria and Prussia for this little section here, a little bit on each, just to give a few, hopeful addition to what the textbook talked about in terms of what is important, what they were doing. So first, let's look at here the idea of Austria. And Austria has something called the pragmatic sanction as a way to make sure they control what happened. Absolutism is all about the idea of holding power in terms of that one absolute monarch. So it's about Austria, right? Last we left Austria, Holy Roman Empire, kind of being in charge of that group of small little states in what is now Germany. One of the biggest things that Austria did is they fought continuing wars with the Turks, the Ottoman Turks, coming out of Asia, which are explained in your textbook. But you can kind of see there's these. Greece was kind of the main fighting area here where these fighting took place. I mean, this is where the Parthenon, the great Greek temple, kind of gets blown up, if you will, being used as a gunpowder depot during these wars. So there's really a whole coalition of people that fought against the Turks in terms of Austria, Poland, Russia, to a degree, fighting up against the Turkish Empire coming in, kind of this whole idea of Christianity versus Islam kind of deal. Obviously, different groups kind of play a big role here. Poland does kind of become a big role here. One man is the name of Sobieski, the king of Poland, who helps, Vienna helps the Austrians defeat the Turks and kind of push them, kind of keep hold of that line, if you will, in Greece there, as they had held different areas here for a very, very long time. One person that comes out of this whole deal is a guy named Prince Eugene of Savoy, and the reason he's able to help Austria is because he actually served as a general for Louis the XIV, and he served as general for him during the War of Spanish Succession. What he does when he comes back to Austria, he actually helps reform the Habsburg army. It was very old school at that time, still run by the nobles, still very old school in terms of how they ran their army. He kind of did the whole Louis thing with it, right? Standardized training, standardized uniform, standardized promotion. Make sure it's all kind of that French-style army. With that French-style army, he's able to defeat the Turks, acquire Austria, and add a lot to Austria. So now we're going to see this idea of this Austria-Hungary kind of empire-type deal. And so we're going to see this, we're going to call modern-day Austria-Hungary. We're going to see it go all the way through World War I, where all different groups of people are being ruled by quote-unquote Austria, right? There's different national groups in there. National means who you identify as, country or state being what the country is. So it becomes a multinational state or multinational empire as Austria takes over different areas, right? So you have Czechs and Hungarians and Croatians, Italians, Austrians, Germans, etc., all in this Austrian type empire, ruled by the Habsburg line. And it's going to be that way for a long, long time. And it's weird because all the different groups see him as a different monarch type deal, the leader of the Austria. So like the Magyars of Hungary saw as a king. The Bohemians of southern Germany saw the king. It was Austria's Archduke. It was an Italian prince. You name it. It's weird how he kind of had the identification. We'll kind of get into that more when we get to World War One, as this kind of as a continuing trend through the 19th century. One thing, as a Catholic state, they made enemies a lot of Protestants and Muslims as well, confiscating property from Protestants and Muslims, taking that away and kind of to the state. We do see the robot sort of serfdom still exists in Austria, where the peasants still give service to nobles, so they live in their land. So it kind of notices kind of unique kind of parts to this country here. Now, the question is nobles, right? Nobles had a lot of power, nobles had a lot of control. And one of the kings here, Charles VI, saw what had happened when you don't have an heir. Now, he didn't have an heir, and he was really concerned about the issue of Spain. Remember, when Spain didn't have an heir, Louis XIV claimed that he and his line was the heir of Spain. They had to fight a big war over it. He was trying to avoid a war, so there was called a pragmatic sanction. Pragmatism being kind of the most logical solution to make things work. He made a deal. Basically, he went to all the nobles and kings and diets and princes and all these people who could have a name to the throne, and made a deal. Okay, he gave all kinds of different concessions, whether it be land or companies, cities, military control, ports, those kind of things, to different rulers of different countries. That way, they would assure that, hey, listen, we got this from you. The Habsburgs will rule Austria forever. It's kind of that deal they essentially made is what it comes down to. And this is a agreement they're placed in there. So obviously his way of controlling the nobles was to make deals and cut deals. And so when he was gone, his line would continue to be fighting over that line. So when Charles does die, he does not have a male heir. His daughter, Maria Theresa, is recognized as the queen. Now, here's a problem. While he said, this is my heir, other countries who were as part of the pragmatic sanction did not recognize Maria Theresa as queen. And all of a sudden, all these armed heirs start showing up with armies saying, hey, guess what? I'm actually supposed to be the king. And we have these many situations. We have like with the War of Three Henries, or we have the War of Spanish Succession, or we have the War of the Roses, where everyone basically wants to be the king. So we call this one then the War of Austrian Succession. Why other countries try to take over Austria? And they refuse to recognize Maria Theresa as being the ruler of this country until she marries a quote-unquote legit ruler. So you kind of see this question of, nobles, how do you keep them under control, all those kind of things as being part of it. And she has to marry to make sure that the nobles and these other peoples would accept her as being the ruler. That's part of it, okay, obviously, in terms of this. Now, we'll talk about Maria Theresa later and Charles later on as enlightened monarchs, but you can kind of see where part of their idea of being absolute, keeping their control, how it kind of comes in that way. Let's talk about Prussia, right? Prussia's a lot of you guys had questions about in terms of your reading that got sent to me about what is, because obviously not around anymore, right? What led to its rise, and who are all these William Fredericks and Fredericks, and you guys know all these rulers and monarchs from Prussia. My family was Prussian. My family does come from Prussia, and I trace their lineage back that far. So Prussia kind of has a little near and dear to my soul, if you will say that way. But here's Prussia, okay? So it's interesting to kind of see the growth of it here in terms of the growth of this land here, where it starts out as this old area ruled by Teutonic knights. Parts are ruled by Poland. Parts are ruled by different duchies and rulers, that kind of stuff, right? Prussia's always it's what's kind of there. It's what's kind of around. Just not real famous yet, okay? Until about the 1700s, 18th century, okay? The little areas, I'm going to flip back a page here. Little areas, they're all kind of disconnected. They're ruled by their feudal groups and organizations, different dukes from different duchies, all those kind of deals, okay? And this was a big area that was decimated by that 30 years. We're going to talk about how the 30 Years' War happened in the 17th century, where it just got steamrolled essentially as these different groups fought over this time period. A third of the population dies. It's kind of a big deal, right? It's very, very disconnected. The area of Brandenburg, which is where you find Berlin today, is ruled by the Hohenzollern family. And they end up getting more and more powerful as they go on. They're going to be the family that is kind of the dynasty that rules Prussia. And this is where you get the many, many Fredericks and Frederick Williams that make Prussia a strong state. And it starts out with Frederick William. We call him the Great Elector. The Great Elector is that ruler. He's essentially the Duke of Brandenburg, okay? And he starts finding ways to hit the nobles, okay? Now, the nobles were the Junkers, or the Junkers or Junkers, soft J, okay, it's German, because they're the ones that have a lot of the power. And he's going to try to find ways to kind of knock their power down a little bit. As the Great Elector, he's kind of the Duke who he's answers them and kind of play back and forth a little bit. So he kind of starts finding ways to get them to support the army. And he wants to make Prussia a great military state. And so he has the Junkers pay taxes. In turn, the Junkers make the peasants pay. Kind of bad for the peasants, but still. We also take the idea of civil service by making new nobles, making new assistants, that kind of stuff, essentially kind of stealing the same ideas of Louis XIV and kind of bring the nobles more under his direct control. Now, he uses that money he gets to build a military. And he builds, at the time, a very, very large army. I mean, 40,000 people doesn't sound like a lot of people today. Back then, 40,000 people was a huge, huge military. He trained them. He followed the same ideas of Louis XIV in terms of kind of how you arrange and train and prepare a military. And in the end, the Prussians will become the most feared soldiers of all time. And he's actually able to take on the Swedes, fight the Swedes for control of parts of Northern Europe, which at the time was thought to be the best army. Remember Gustav Adolphus and that kind of stuff. And that was a big part. Now, the reason Prussia was so popular for people is that they were pretty tolerant. Okay, they were Calvinists for the most part. And they were overall tolerant of other religions, whether it be other Protestant sects like Lutherans and all other groups, or bringing people that were Jewish. If you were being harassed or your rights are being infringed on somewhere else, come to Prussia. we have cookies, kind of situation. And he used a lot of those great skills that our people had, much like the Dutch had done a century earlier, to create a much better place. That includes internal improvements in terms of banking, in terms of roads, in terms of finding energy and coal and mining and all that kind of stuff, make country a much, much better place. Now, after he dies, we have who we call Frederick the First, the son of Frederick William. Now, he is made what's called King in Prussia, not King of Prussia. That's after the War of Spanish Succession at the turn of the 18th century. And he essentially fights on the side of the Holy Roman Empire, trying to keep France down. And after his army does a really good job, right, the Holy Roman Empire he basically says, I want to be a king. I don't want to be a duke anymore. I want to be a king. Problem is, you're not allowed to be a king in the Holy Roman Empire. You have a Holy Roman Empire. You can't be king of anywhere. And so he basically argues this and rules eventually Brandenburg, Prussia as a single person. Instead of being a duke, ruling as kind of a little noble feudal kind of area, he's what's called king in Prussia instead of king of Prussia, as a way to kind of get his power in a way, right, and in exchange that military service. Now, Frederick I lived a very, very lavish lifestyle. Not quite Louis XIV-ish, but very, very close, right? Big house and money and fancy living, all those kind of things was part of it. His son was very, very different. Okay, Frederick was who makes the idea of being a king of Prussia, a king in Prussia. Okay, and gets the whole thing going. His son was very, very different. So his son, King Frederick William I, was called the Sergeant King. He lived a very, very frugal life. In fact, he actually gave up his big, huge palace to go live in military barracks instead. And his goal was to make the army the most powerful system ever. He put all of his money into the army. He got areas of mining, got areas of control, all kind of stuff to make this great army. His idea was to make Prussia great through a powerful, powerful military. And to control those nobles, he said, listen, if my army is awesome, right, the nobles want to be in the army. Who controls the army? Me. So his goal is trying to get the Junkers to be part of the army. And then when they're in the army, he controls them as officers ruling, controlling parts of his military. And so his way is kind of putting those Junker into the military class as officers and generals, that kind of stuff, and controlling people that way. Now, one of the things that Frederick William, the Sergeant King, did was he had kind of a thing for very tall soldiers. He wanted all of his soldiers to be over 6 feet tall. Now, at this time, the average height for a guy was probably 5'6". 6 feet's nothing today, right? But one thing that Frederick William I wanted was very, very tall soldiers. He put them in the very front row, and these armies fought in these big lines, right? They would march lines at each other, shoot each other in charge and stuff, right? His idea was essentially to scare the living crap out of his opponents by having these gigantic, tall dudes in the front line marching at you all in sync and be like, holy crap, this is scary, and run away. That was his big goal. And it worked. He didn't have to fight any wars, actually. The threat of his army was enough to make sure that people didn't want to fight him. He's also very, very strict, though, too. He was strict with everybody, by the way. Okay, he was absolutist to the core. He involved in every single part of the state, from military to mining to the economy to taxes, whatever. He was involved in every single part of this. And he had very strict written policies with punishments for his court members, in that if you did something wrong, there was very, very strict punishments, from banishment to physical punishment, so that you would not get out of line. And he also raised his kid the same way. When the person would become King Frederick II, known affectionately as Fritz, he was raised with iron fist, right? He was expected to be a soldier, be hard, be tough, be like his father. And the thing is, he really wasn't. Frederick the Great grew up doing a lot of things. He was kind of more, more of a guy who liked playing the flute and reading poetry and reading books and reading the French Enlightenment writers, all that kind of stuff, right? He was a soldier too, right? But tried to run away as a boy. Honestly, there are rumors that he may have had a homosexual relationship, and as part of this relationship, his father, King Frederick William I, the Sergeant King, chose to have his friend that he tried to run away with killed. Yep, that's the way it goes. And as a soldier, being the prince and stuff, and becomes king, he actually led the army personally. He created something that would help make armies rule better. Now, obviously, you talk about the army fighting big straight lines, right? Your goal is to maneuver so that you got yourself on the flank of your enemy. Now, typically, back then, orders were done in right angles only. He created what's called the oblique. The oblique. So if my army is here, I'm kind of looking at me in the picture. You're like, what's going on here, right? Here's my one army here. We used to fight in these straight lines. Red, V blue, right? We're going to move towards each other and we're trying to maneuver. The goal for blue was to get on the flank. So when I shoot, oh, it's all going to be bad coming right down this way for these guys. The order that Frederick II created, was something called the oblique. It was a series of orders where he would order 45-degree turns. And the goal he had was to maneuver his military so that by doing these 45-degree turns, he had a better chance of inflicting more damage upon his enemies. And this oblique order way of maneuvering his troops at that 45-degree angle allowed him to actually maneuver that army better. And he actually used it for his country advantage. He invaded a little area called Silesia. Silesia comes a lot of times, ladies and gentlemen, World War I and later on as well. But it's a very coal-rich territory. Coal obviously is needed for the upcoming Industrial Revolution, for smelting iron, making weapons, all that kind of stuff. And he wanted that piece of territory. And so it was one of those ways that he really helped his country by using his military. Now, he did a lot of things when they were being part of it. Now, he was really involved in a lot of different deals here in terms of economics. So he created things like toll roads, that way to pay for his military. He pushed for new mines and industry and creation of new ideas in Prussia. He involved in economic development, new industries, new trade and agriculture, new crops. He embraced the potato as a new crop that was very, very easy to sustain his people. He's also a thinking guy, though. We'll talk about him as an enlightened monarch later on. He writes letters with philosophers in France and guys who are the great thinkers of the time. One of the biggest things he does is he actually works on what's called the partition of Poland. Poland's kind of a very, very weak kingdom. We'll do more partition of Poland later on in more detail. But essentially, he's one that helped orchestrate this, where Austria, Russia, and Prussia basically walk in, each take a third of Poland, just kind of line it up. Poland ends up being a little beat-up guy of Europe, being pounded on left and right. Now, what Frederick actually does, he makes a fake currency, takes over Poland, and runs it up, right? So people think his currency is worth a lot of money. Then he takes that currency and drops it. And essentially, the king of Poland and the Polish nobles need to basically take their country and sell it off to him as a way to make money back, because he essentially just hosed them in a scam. And his big goal was to get Poland for economic development. He wants access to the sea. He wants access for trade, and Poland is his chance for that. We're going to more about Frederick II as an enlightened monarch later on, things that he does. But here's a little him, how he becomes more of a absolutist monarch, how he fits the idea of absolutism. Thank you for listening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have a wonderful day.